I remember the day everything changed. I was sitting in my small apartment in Manchester. It was raining outside, as always. I had finished my shift at the factory, made a cup of tea, and opened my old laptop. I was bored and tired. I wanted something new in my life, something different. A few weeks earlier, I had joined a free website where people from different countries chat and practice English. I didn't speak much. My English was bad. I only wrote short words, like hello, or how are you? Most people didn't answer me. Maybe they thought I was boring. Maybe they didn't have time. But then I met Daniel. Daniel lived in Canada, in a town near Toronto. He said he liked football and hiking. He was my age, 27, and he wanted to learn about England. I didn't expect much from the chat. I thought he would disappear like the others. But Daniel didn't disappear. He stayed. At first, we chatted once a week. I used a translator to help me write. I made many mistakes. Sometimes I felt stupid. But Daniel was kind. He never laughed at me. He always waited while I looked for words. Sometimes he even sent voice messages to help me hear the words. One day, he said, "Let's speak by voice. It will help your English." I was scared. My heart was beating fast. What if I said something wrong? What if he didn't understand me? But I agreed. The first call was strange. I couldn't say much. I repeated words like, yes, okay, and thank you. Daniel spoke slowly. He asked simple questions. What's the weather today? What did you eat for lunch? They were small things, but they helped. We began talking every Sunday. I looked forward to those Sundays. I would sit near the window with my headphones, waiting for his call. I started reading more, watching English videos, repeating words out loud like a crazy person. My cat thought I was losing my mind. 6 months passed. One Sunday, Daniel said, "Hey, your English is much better now." I smiled. Really? Yes. You speak clearly. You don't need the translator anymore. It felt like I had climbed a mountain. From that moment, something changed in me. I was not just learning English. I was using it. Living it. One day, Daniel asked me, "Have you ever thought about coming to Canada?" I laughed. Me? I work in a factory. I've never left the UK. He said, "Well, you should. You can stay at my place. Come in the summer." I couldn't believe it. I said I would think about it. And I did. I started to save money. I worked extra shifts. I stopped buying silly things. I had a goal now. 3 months later, I was on a plane to Toronto. It was my first flight. I was nervous. I had never been in the air before. When I looked out the window, I saw clouds like white pillows. I thought, this is crazy. I'm flying across the world to meet someone I only know from the internet. When I landed, Daniel was waiting with a sign that said, "Welcome, mate." We hugged like old friends. "Let's go get some Tim Hortons," he said. I had no idea what that was, but I nodded. That summer in Canada was one of the best times of my life. We went hiking in Algonquin Park, we ate poutine, and we even played football with some of his friends. And the best part? I spoke only English the whole time. There was one night I remember clearly. We were sitting by a lake. The water was quiet. The stars were bright. Daniel said, "You know, I think your English is better than mine now." I laughed. "No way." He smiled. "Seriously. You've changed so much." And he was right. After that night by the lake, I felt different. Not just confident in English, different inside. I realized something important. Learning a language isn't about grammar or big words. It's about being brave. It's about saying, "I don't know this, but I'll try anyway." The last week of my trip, Daniel invited me to speak at his language club. "We meet every Wednesday," he said. "Just come and talk about your experience learning English." "No way," I said. "I can't give a speech. It's not a speech. Just a chat." I agreed, but I was terrified. The club met in a small library. There were about 15 people. They were immigrants, students, older women, young guys, all learning English like I had been. I stood in front of them and said, "Hi, I'm Joe. I'm from England. My English used to be bad, but now I'm here. They laughed. In a good way. I told them about my first chat with Daniel. I told them about using a translator, about the fear of voice calls, about reading kids' books to learn vocabulary. I told them about watching English movies with subtitles. Then I looked up and saw they were all listening carefully. I finished by saying, the best way to learn a language is to talk. Make mistakes. Laugh at yourself. And keep going. When I sat down, they clapped. I felt something in my chest, a kind of warmth. A quiet pride. After the meeting, a woman from India came to me and said, "Your story gives me hope." Thank you. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and smiled. That night, Daniel and I walked home through the cool air. "You were great," he said. "You think?" "I know." I flew back to England 2 days later. My heart was heavy. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want that summer to end. But life was waiting. The factory was waiting. Rain was waiting. Back in Manchester, everything looked the same. But I had changed. I went back to work, but something didn't feel right. The noise, the machines, the routine. I kept thinking about Canada. About that language club. About helping others. One afternoon, during my break, I looked up "volunteer English tutor" on my phone. A charity near my neighborhood was looking for people to help immigrants practice speaking. I signed up. The next week, I sat in a small room with 2 men from Syria and a woman from Poland. They were nervous. Just like I had been. I introduced myself and said, "Don't worry. I know exactly how this feels." We started slowly. "What is your name? Where are you from? What do you like to eat?" We laughed a lot. When they made mistakes, I smiled and said, "Try again." No problem. Just like Daniel had done with me. That small room became my new classroom. Every Wednesday night, I helped people talk. And every time I left, I felt like I had done something good. One evening, one of the Syrian men, his name was Samir, stayed behind. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Your English is very good. Did you study at university?" I laughed. "No. I learned it from a Canadian guy online." He blinked. "Really? Really? We just talked every week." I was terrible at first. But I didn't stop. Samir nodded slowly. Maybe I can do the same." "You can," I said. "You already are." After a few months, something amazing happened. The charity offered me a paid job as a teaching assistant. I couldn't believe it. Me, Joe, the guy who couldn't say "hello" on the phone 2 years ago, now helping others speak English for real. I started going to training sessions, reading books on language learning, even learning a bit of Arabic and Polish to help my students feel more comfortable. Every week brought new stories, new laughter, and sometimes even tears. But the work made me feel alive. One Friday, as I walked home from class, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Hey, mate. You ever think about doing this full time? You're a natural." I stopped on the street and smiled. Then I typed, "Yeah. I do think about it. A lot." The next day, I started looking at university courses in education. I had never gone to university. Never thought I was smart enough. But now, I didn't care about being smart. I just cared about helping people. About passing on what Daniel gave to me. English changed my life. But it wasn't because of books or grammar rules. It was because of one person who listened. One person who didn't laugh when I made mistakes. Now, I wanted to be that person for someone else. After Daniel's message about doing it full time, I couldn't stop thinking. Teaching. Me, a teacher. It sounded unreal, like wearing someone else's clothes. But the idea stuck. I was still working evenings at the cafe where I first practiced speaking with tourists. One day, my manager asked if I could train a new staff member from Turkey. Her English was worse than mine had ever been. "I don't think I'm the right person," I said. "You speak clearly," she said. "And she won't feel stupid around you." So I trained her. Her name was Elif. She was shy, but quick. She listened carefully, nodded a lot, and always tried to copy my words. Sometimes she said, "Sorry, my English is bad." I always replied, "You're learning. That's not bad. That's brave." We worked together for 3 weeks. At the end of her training, she said something I didn't expect. "You're not like a normal teacher," she said. "You speak like someone who understands." That hit me hard. Because I did understand. I knew what it felt like to freeze in conversation. To forget simple words. To avoid eye contact out of fear. I understood all of it. That weekend, I went to a job fair for language learners. It was full of schools, charities, and training centers. There were brochures, workshops, and smiling people in name tags. I walked around for 2 hours and almost left without talking to anyone. Then I saw a small booth in the corner with a handmade sign that said, "Volunteer English Conversation, we need you." A woman behind the table smiled at me. "Do you speak English?" she asked kindly. I laughed. "I try." Her name was Linda, and she worked for a small organization that helped newcomers settle in the UK. They ran free classes on Saturdays in a community center near my flat. "We need people who can lead speaking groups," she said. "You don't need a degree. Just patience and time." That I had. I started the next weekend. My first group had 4 people. A man from Sudan, a woman from Ukraine, and 2 brothers from Venezuela. They were nervous, just like I had been. I started by writing on the whiteboard, "Why do you want to learn English?" The answers were simple. For work. For my children. To feel normal again. We spoke slowly. We laughed at mistakes. We repeated sentences 10 times. We shared coffee and biscuits. After every session, I walked home smiling. This was it. This was what I wanted. I called Daniel that night. "You were right," I said. "This is the best feeling." He replied, "Told you. Teaching is just giving back what someone once gave you." That Monday, I applied to take a CELTA course, a qualification for teaching English to adults. It was intense and expensive, but I found a scholarship program that helped students from low-income backgrounds. I wrote a letter explaining why I wanted to do it. I told them about Daniel. About Elif. About the cafe. The conversation group. The fear. The hope. 2 weeks later, I got an email, "We're pleased to offer you a full scholarship." I stared at the screen for a full minute, not moving. The course started in March. It was the hardest thing I had done in years. Every day we learned new techniques. How to correct mistakes without breaking confidence. How to build vocabulary in context. How to design lessons that kept people talking. We watched experienced teachers run classes. Then we tried ourselves. The first time I stood in front of 12 students, my mouth was dry and my legs felt weak. I dropped my pen twice. I forgot a grammar rule. But I kept going. At the end of that lesson, a man from Iran shook my hand and said, "You are very patient. You make us feel smart." I went home and cried. Not because I was sad. But because for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing the right thing. By the time the course ended, I had a certificate, a new group of teacher friends, and 3 job offers. I took a part-time teaching job at a local language school and kept leading the Saturday group. My life was full, busy, meaningful. One evening, after class, a woman named Lydia from Colombia stayed behind. She had tears in her eyes. "I got the job," she said. "What job?" I asked. "The receptionist job at the hotel." I had the interview in English. I didn't panic. I said everything. "That's amazing." She took a breath. "Before I met you, I didn't believe in myself. You helped me believe again." Lydia's words stayed with me all night. I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, holding a cup of tea, thinking about how far I had come. I had spent most of my life thinking I wasn't good enough, not smart enough, not brave enough. But here I was, helping people speak, find work, and feel strong again. All with something as simple as English. 3 months later, the school director called me into her office. Her name was Margaret. She was strict but fair, and never smiled unless it was really necessary. "I've been watching your work," she said. "I thought I had done something wrong. She looked at me and said, "Would you be interested in leading your own course? Beginners. 2 evenings a week." I almost said no. But I didn't. "Yes," I said. "I'd love to." The class started with 9 students. A man from Egypt who had been a surgeon. A woman from Thailand who was a cleaner in a hotel. A teenage girl from Eritrea who barely spoke at all. The first few lessons were slow. I kept things simple. "Where are you from? What do you do? What do you like?" They were shy at first. But each week, their voices grew louder. I gave them real-life challenges. I sent them to the local supermarket to ask where things were. I had them order coffee at the cafe across the street. They came back laughing, proud, full of energy. At the end of our 6th week, I gave them a writing task: write about your first day in England. One of the students, the teenage girl from Eritrea, handed me a piece of paper. It said, "I come to England in a boat. I am cold. I am scared. Now I have a teacher. Now I have English. Now I have a voice." I had to read it twice. When I looked up, she smiled. It was the first time I had seen her smile since the class began. That night, I emailed Daniel. We started with "Hello. Now we're here." He wrote back right away. "You're changing lives now, mate. I knew you would." Later that year, something unexpected happened. A small publishing company that focused on stories from immigrants and teachers contacted me. They had seen an old blog post I'd written about my journey. They wanted me to write a short book for English learners, based on my real story. I said yes. It wasn't a perfect book. The sentences were simple. The story was true. It started with a young man in a rainy city, alone, scared to speak. It ended with that same man standing in front of a classroom, teaching others how to speak without fear. The book came out 6 months later. It was called "Speak Like You Belong." One day after class, a new student came to me. She held my book in her hands. "This is yours?" she asked. "Yes." She held it to her chest. "I read it in my country. It helped me. I didn't feel alone. I didn't know what to say." Later, when I walked home, I remembered the first time I spoke to Daniel by voice. I remembered the silence, the nerves, the long pauses. Now I was helping others through that same fear. English gave me a new life. Not because I speak it perfectly, I don't. Not because I learned grammar rules, I still break some. But because it gave me people. It gave me purpose. And now, when someone sits across from me, nervous, eyes down, afraid to speak, I always say the same thing. "I know how this feels. I've been there too. Just talk to me." And they do. Sometimes slowly. Sometimes with mistakes. But they talk. And I listen. Because that's how it all started. Thank you for listening to this story. If you liked it, write about it in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.